Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are talking about Dark Magician Girl, or more specifically, the Magician Girl archetype. You guys know I love to do these types of videos talking about underappreciated, underdeveloped archetypes that really deserve to have a big wave come their way and actually help them be playable in the modern day age. But this is a really interesting one because this is an archetype that people forget a lot of time just even exists. For a while, when I first saw the Magician Girl monsters, I thought they were fake the first time I saw them. They didn't even seem real to me. Then when I finally realized they were real, they have, I would say, uninteresting card. And then from there, the rest of them are just pretty freaking bad. So it's interesting. We're going to be going through what they have for their cards, what generic cards that they can make use of that already exist in the game that are pretty nice. And then other than that, we're going to be talking about what I'd like to see, where Konami should probably go if they ever want to make this archetype better. Because let's just face it, this is Dark Magician Girl. This is a top 5 card in terms of notoriety in the entire game. Up there with Blue Eyes, Dark Magician, Karibo, and then you're probably looking at Dark Magician Girl and I don't know what even the last one would be, Red Eye, Cyber Dragon, something like that. Or hero cards maybe, but I don't know if there's a single hero card that's more notable than Dark Magician Girl, but yeah. And it's a card played by Yugi. There's just so many reasons why Konami probably will revisit this archetype at some point down the line. I just don't know when it'd be, and, maybe they just kind of view it as a lost cause. Some of these anime decks, they just don't care too much to really give great support, but we'll see. So yeah, let's get started here. Obviously, Dark Magician Girl, we know what she is. She's almost essentially a vanilla, because she just gains 300 attack for every Dark Magician or Magician of Black Chaos in the graveyard. If you're playing a Magician Girl pure deck, that's probably not coming up, but I figure she's worth noting. One thing that is also important is not many of the other Magician Girls actually list Dark Magician Girl, but I wouldn't be surprised if, kind of like Dark Magician, if they made support for this deck and just said, screw it, we're just going to have those spells that just list Dark Magician Girl in the text, and then there's ways to search cards that list Dark Magician Girl in text, kind of thing, and kind of roll it from there. But I don't know, just worth noting. Next up, we have Berry Magician Girl. This is by far the best card the archetype has to offer. On normal summon, it adds any Magician Girl from deck to hand. That's great. And if it's ever targeted for an effect or attack from your opponent, you can just change this card's battle position and special summon a Magician Girl straight from the deck. It's actually quite good. I like this card a lot. It's a +1 that also gives you the potential to tutor another Magician Girl straight out of the deck. This card is by far, unquestionably, the best card in the archetype. It's really the only card that I think is a legitimate, good card. Next up here, we have Lemon Magician Girl. She has an interesting effect. Her first effect says she contribute a Magician Girl that's not herself to add any spellcaster in the game from deck to hand. It's quite good. Unfortunately, this deck is pretty shit at putting a second Magician Girl on the field in one turn. So that's interesting, but we kind of need to see more support that kind of helps us put multiple Magician Girls on the field in the first place. And then also, this is what the rest of the Magician Girls do. If they're targeted for an attack, you special summon a spellcaster from somewhere, and then you cut the opponent's monster's attack in half. So this one will summon a spellcaster from hand, negates that monster's effects, but then you change the attack target to that new monster and cut your opponent's attacking monster's attack in half. Weird, but I guess it's a pretty deterring effect theoretically in the battle phase, but we know how good decks are at just clearing your board before you even go to battle phase nowadays, so it's kind of outdated. Apple Magician Girl is next. This card is targeted for attack, special level 5 or lower, spellcaster from hand, change the attack to it, and cut the opponent's monster's attack in half. If this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, target up to 3 other Magician Girls with different names engraved and add them to your hand. That's a pretty powerful float effect, but it is destruction. It's not just when this card is sent, unfortunately, so it's just okay. You can just crash it. You are just 1200, so you could just theoretically just crash this into something to add 3 Magician Girls back from grave. But again, another card that's just not that impressive for modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! Chocolate Magician Girl, once per turn, discard a spellcaster to draw 1 card. it's actually not bad for a deck that probably has too many normal summons. Being able to just cycle them for maybe some more impactful cards is not the worst. Also, if this card started for attack, target a spellcaster in grave, except for Chocolate Magician Girl. Summon it, change the attack target to it, and cut your opponent's monster's attack in half. This one's a little better because it summons from grave. It doesn't require you to have something in hand. This one's probably the second best monster to me out of the ones we have, but still not ideal. And the last one is Kiwi Magician Girl. She's kind of like a, not Gale the Whirlwind, Kalute-esque card. She pitches from hand as a quick effect to buff all Magician Girl monsters you control by 300 for every Magician Girl on field and in grave with different names. That'll be like bare minimum 2, so that's like a 600 buff bare minimum, and that's if you don't have anything else in grave, anything else on field as far as different names. That's actually a decent buff, but still, at the end of the day, not great. Also, while this card's on the field, spellcasters can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects. That would be decent, except this is a level 5 with no way to summon itself to the field, so it has to be summoned off of the other Magician Girls or some other effect, which is not reliable. It makes this card like a pretty hard brick at the end of the day. But there you go. I mean, that's literally all the Magician Girls. I think they only made actual monsters there. Now, some of the Dark Magician cards list Dark Magician Girl as well, but they list specifically Dark Magician Girl, so they most of the time don't work with any of the other Magician Girls, and that's just pretty poop. So there you go. I mean, Bearing Magician Girl is really the only legit, respectable card here, and they have no spell traps. They have no other good monsters, no legit extenders. The deck, I mean, like, it's really not even a deck. I would argue that it's, like, not even really an archetype because they just don't do enough together to even have, like, a cohesive strategy. But yeah, but there's also generic cards, so let's get into some of those. Magician Souls, not only is this, like, a solid spellcaster extender that can also get you draws, but it also dumps Dark Magician Girl. That's actually pretty nice. I mean, I could easily see a route where they give a nice wave of support to this deck, and just getting Dark Magician Girl in rotation is really good for the deck. So Souls is just like phenomenal because it's an extender body. It gets you draws, and it sets you up Dark Magician Girl in grave without, if you didn't have access to her otherwise. So could be an amazing card in the deck potentially. Magician's Rod, the deck seems like it has normal summons, but theoretically this searches a card that lists Dark Magician in the text, and like I said, there are a lot of cards that list Dark Magician that also list Dark Magician Girl, so like it can potentially search some cards there, which is interesting. Magician's Restage, this is a reborn for any level 3 or lower spellcaster. Then when it leaves the field, like maybe Magician Souls, Right-Hand Magician, or Magician's Right Hand is pretty much a negate for the first spell card your opponent activates on their next turn. So really good value off of that card, potentially getting you a reborn as well as a spell negate just in the value of one card. Pretty solid. Dark Magic Veil, again, another reborn, but it has to reborn a dark spellcaster. That's the one downside of this card, but with Magician Souls, with Dark Magician Girl, that's pretty doable. Can also summon them from hand, too, to unbrick stuff. It's pretty decent. Spellbook of Knowledge. This more so represents the entire Spellbook engine, potentially. I mean, listen, we just saw Spellbook of Judgment come off the ban list in the OCG. If that happens, then almost any spellcaster in the deck in the game kind of can sit back and take another look at Spellbooks, because that card really seems crazy. I know somebody topped like a Striker Spellbook list. I don't know what the best way to play it is, that card in that deck would be, but like it's something to take a look at for sure. Magicalized Fusion, getting you fusion summons from grave, really efficient fusion summons is pretty good. It just depends, you know. We'll get to some of the fusions later on. Secret Village of the Spellcaster. This card's crazy, and this card would probably be a part of the deck because you just would need ways to cheap easy wins where this card can blank somewhere between 2 to 5 cards in your opponent's hand and just outright win you the duel at times, so that could definitely come up. Secrets of Magic. This is a card that lists Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl in its text, so it just becomes a quick play fusion spell for the deck that becomes searchable off of stuff like Magician's Rod. You know, that's kind of one of the good examples there. Dark Renewal. It's kind of an interruption. When your opponent, it is a when effect, but when your opponent normal or special summons a monster, you target one of the monsters they summoned and a spellcaster you control, send them to grave, then you special summon a dark spellcaster straight from the deck or graveyard. Again, it does summon specifically a dark spellcaster, but, you know, if you probably have to play Dark Magician Girl anyway, just as an engine requirement, depending on what kind of support they make, this becomes like an interruption that also gets you to, you know, a dark spellcaster boss monster, potentially, which is solid. And then for the extra stuff, Dark Magician Girl, the Dragon Knight, this card is essentially a Trident. But it's pretty, it's fairly easy to summon. It just takes Magician Girl, Dark Magician Girl with any dragon. Not the hardest thing to do. You also have Selene here. This revives spellcasters, gets them in rotation. Pretty good link monster for generic spellcaster decks. Artemis as well, especially since we have multiple like Monster Reborn type cards. Being able to link them into this, then reborn them back, gets you an extra body on the field. And that's pretty much it. So that's pretty much covering just like a bunch of generic spellcaster support. You just can't forget it. Spellcaster is kind of up there with the warriors, with the machines, with the dragon types in the game as far as having a lot of solid just support cards to their name, so that any new deck, even if it is somewhat underpowered, some of those generic boosting cards do end up like raising a deck's level, even if the deck purely by itself isn't all the way there already. But listen, this deck needs so much. I mean, I said at the beginning of the video, I'll tell you what I think the deck needs. It needs like everything. It needs legit cards. Like Barry Magician Girl is your best card. It doesn't even have a good search target. We need like a legitimate search target. We need ways to extend. We need ways to set up interruption, some game plan. There's really no game plan here. It's just have some funny battle cheap mechanics to keep you alive. I've seen people try to play like Magician Girl Stun, which is like literally 30 trap cards and then the Magician Girls. And unless you're just like winning the duel with just like stupid floodgates and solemns and stuff, like that's it. That's like your legit only win condition in that route, and that's awful. You're gonna have such a bad time trying to get wins, even at locals, with a deck like that. So it needs everything. It needs extenders. It needs probably more starters, maybe a searcher. It needs a legit win condition. I don't know if they go a fusion route, like kind of with the Dark Magician Girl, the Dragon Knight, where, you know, you make the deck fusion based and you're just trying to get to like a Magician Girl fusion that's pretty good. But maybe that's a little bit too close to like Witchcrafter now. They could go Link style. I don't think necessarily Exceed or Synchro makes a ton of sense. I mean, theoretically, if they made new tuner cards, whatever, they could. But I think like probably if it goes any route, it'd be like Fusion or Link. They need spells and traps. They have 0 spells and traps, and utility cards there would be awesome. They need so much. But like I said at the beginning as well, it's Dark Magician. It's literally one of the 5 most well-known cards in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay? If there is like anything that I think could get that, it's one thing that I think that at any given moment we are liable for Cyber Dragon support, Blue Eye support, Dark Magician support. Why can't Dark Magician Girl be thrown in there? Part of it's because it's lumped in a little bit with Dark Magician, so I think Konami, if they make Dark Magician cards, a lot of times they also work with Dark Magician Girl, but it doesn't. They don't usually work with the Magician Girl archetype. So I'd like to see them go after this archetype a little harder, make them something. Like just give them a path. They just don't even have a direction right now. And they pretty much just need everything. Start with Barry Magician Girl, build your way out from there, and make a legit, like, competent strategy. Doesn't have to be meta, just something playable. But yeah, that's it for today, guys. I've rambled enough about Magician Girls here. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me down the line. Also, I do have a Twitter now, so follow me on Twitter if you want to just see more outside of just the channel stuff. And yeah, I'm out of here. Peace.